yet another exciting edition of Sports Extraordinary Weekend Edition here on Atlantic Television Network. And this edition of the program is special because more Nigerians begin to pick Olympic tickets. Just with a few days to Olympic Games in Paris, more Nigerians are on the board to Paris for the Olympic Games. And coming in from football, it is crucial stage. That's the business end of the league with just about 7 to 8 matches to conclude the season. It is very hot and feverish, especially in the Premiership in England, where Arsenal so far leads. And here in Nigeria, a lot more is happening with the Premier League as well. Who gets it? Will it be a brand new champion at the end of the day? Let's look at it together this weekend on Sports Extraordinary. When we return for the break, we'll serve you with the details, especially what's happening with the Australian Grand Prix returning as a season opener next year as well. So a lot to talk about. Stay as we bring you details after this very short break. Welcome back. It's Sports Weekend Edition. This weekend, I have with me Kingsley Manuel.
Thank you very much for having me, Siri. Very happy to be here this weekend edition of the show.
This weekend edition of the show, we're bringing you latest as it concerns the Paris Olympic Games. The 2024 Olympic Games coming up in Paris is just very few weeks away, and some more Nigerians are beginning to join the get tickets for the Olympic Games. And one latest ticket earner at the Olympic Games for Nigeria is Ezekiel Nathaniel, and it's in the 400 meters event. How did this one happen? Kingsley, the latest Nigerian to be on the party train to Paris for the Olympic Games.
Very impressive record, of course, for Ezekiel Nathaniel, coming up with a time of 48.29 seconds.
That looks like a record time.
Yeah, he actually shattered the 400 meters record down there at the Tom Jones Invitational. I think it was actually a very huge one for him, and that particular feat, of course, gives him that ticket for the Paris Olympic Games. And I think for me, it's actually a good one, of course, for Nathaniel. Now we have him, of course, coming up, for the 400 meters, events, and I think it's actually cheering news because we'll see more Nigerians, of course, picking up the ticket, just like you mentioned. We'll see the likes of, Enoch Adeko Keso on the 100 meters. We talk about the likes of Toby Amusan and the rest of them, and that
is actually the latest, one of the latest qualifiers as well for the Olympic Games.
And that actually gives Team Nigeria more strength when it has to do with athletics and the Paris Olympic. Last time outing in the Tokyo Olympics, we didn't actually have a better outing at all. It was only Blessing Obrodo who got a silver medal, of course, for Team Nigeria in the wrestling event. I think with the progress we've seen from our athletes so far, I think going down to the Paris Olympic, they will be able to challenge, looking at the fact that they've been actually they've been competing very, very favorably in different competitions. So this actually means a lot, of course, for Nigeria, and we're looking forward to see how their outing at the Paris Olympic, of course, will look like.
Looking at how Nigerians are performing at the weekend in athletics, Nigeria's a hero best. I won in the seasons what looks like a season best of 2.21 in the high jump event. 2.21, that looks like quite a height for Nigeria.
Well, the height, of course, for Mahira Breast, another Nigerian athlete that everyone is looking up for at this point in time. We hope, of course, to see him as well, making it, to the past as well. I think Nigeria representing high jump will be another, discipline where we should also look forward in grabbing, but it's been a long time, of course, we had, of course,
in Nigeria
in the high jump, as it is. So I think for me, it would be a very cheering one to see Nigeria, of course, competing, in the high jump event. And I think we should also, look at, athletes that are all that, major more in high jump, train them and see how far, of course, they'll be able to go at the end of the day. So for me, Mr. Siri, cheering news for Nigerian athletes, especially when it has to do with athletics. We've seen the very best, of course, making it down to the Olympics. I think this particular Olympics is going to be very, very befitting. When you take a look at our level of preparation so far, not only in athletics, you talk about boxing, you talk about wrestling as well. And football-wise, also we're also prepared as it's time. And the sport ministry, they're doing everything they can at this point in time to make sure that they get things right. So for me, I think for what I'm seeing so far, this particular Paris Olympic will be, if not to say, one of the best, of course, for Team Nigeria.
Well, let's hope that Team Nigeria at the Olympic Games will be properly, conditioned ahead of the games will start in just very few weeks from now. But like you real out there, Toby Amoso will be at the Olympic Games, and of course her feat as the world best in our in our event. And of course we have Favour Philly going to the Olympics for the first time as well. And we told you about the high jumper who is as well preparing to see whether he can get at it. But again, we've had good representation, especially in wrestling. We've had nearly 6 to 7 wrestlers that will be representing Nigeria at Team Nigeria at the Olympic Games. Yeah,
6 to 7 wrestlers, and it's actually good news. We have Blessing Oborodudu, we have Dunayo Dekre, we have Messi Genesis as well. These are wrestlers, of course, that are also coming up. Kolawale is also in that mix, and that actually is a very huge one, of course, for Team Nigeria. Wrestling, of course, has been our strength in the Olympics. In fact, the last time we went to the Olympics, that was in Tokyo. Blessing Oborodu actually won a silver medal for Team Nigeria, and that was one of the highest we had. We got at the Tokyo Olympic Games was 1 silver and 1 bronze. And I think for me, wrestling at this point in time, looking at the level of preparation and how Daniel Nigali has been able, of course, to put these wrestlers together, not only relying on the older wrestlers, but he's been able to groom younger wrestlers, of course, to join the mix, and that actually gives the federation, of course, more strength in going down to the Paris Olympics. So for me, I think the Wrestling Federation, they're very much ready. They don't disappoint, and at any point, of course, they're in any championship. We should be looking forward to see them, of course, maybe grabbing medals as well at the Paris Olympic Games.
Well, we hope that Nigerians will continue to prepare and, of course, get more tickets where available. But I'm sure this will look like Nigeria's largest contingent to the Olympic Games, and with that, there's a lot of hopes as well when you bring your top athletes who are doing very well around the world. Toby Amoso, Blessing Oborodu in wrestling, and the rest of them going to the Olympic Games. And of course, the very young ones, Favour Philly as well, going to the Olympics for the first time, but with a very high time. Then you know that yes, Nigeria do have hope going to the Olympic Games. One of the things that often have impacted Nigeria's participation in Olympic Games has been funds. But the new sports minister seems to be doing everything possible to ensuring that funds would not be a hindrance to performances at the Olympic Games.
Yes, I think for me that's a very good approach, from the sports minister John Waneno. He actually put up the fact that the sports ministry, they're actually on it in making sure that they provide adequate fund for these athletes to go down to the Paris Olympic, of course, to have a better performance, because fund is very, very necessary. When the athletes are well taken care of, they'll be stable mentally, to make sure that they get the best on their various events, and not only providing funds as well for this athlete. The minister also proposed the fact that some of these top athletes, of course, will be put on payroll, and therefore to, of course, continue to receive something from the federal government. I think that's actually a very good one. If this athletes on payroll and they continue to get something from the federal government, to actually give them a high level of motivation. But for me, Senator John Waneno, I think he has been on the hem of affairs, despite the ugly news we had at the African Games, where some of the athletes, of course, were not being paid. But I hope that all of that, of course, will be done and dusted in order for we to focus more on the Paris Olympic Game. But he has actually come up to say that there are plans on ground in order for the federal government to provide the athletes a better welfare ahead of the Paris Olympic Games.
Well, we hope that everything will be put in place, but from the reports we're getting so far, it is looking good, and the athletes are responding as well to the level of motivation given by the sports ministry. Let's stay away from that, and quickly, just before we go to tennis, this weekend, the Augustas, the 88 Augustas is ongoing out there, and top golfers around the world are taking opportunity to be part of the 88 Augustas National Golf Championship. But one name that has made the cut and made it in history is Tiger Woods. He's made one over par, and of course tied for 22nd after 36 holes, and making it a 24th consecutive cut at the Augustas. Tiger Woods can't stop making history and making the marks, having the cut. One cut over, and he's tied 22nd over after 36 holes, making him a 24th consecutive appearance at the Augustas.
Of course, what is in him will always remain in him, no matter the circumstances, surrounding the man. Of course, he has actually passed through a lot, and despite all of those hurdles, he still came back and, of course, still creating the record, for himself. That's to tell you that Tiger Woods, of course, is always that man you rely on when it comes to any, championship, as states. And for me, very impressive one, of course, for the man. And from what we've seen so far, you never can tell. He might just, keep firing at this point in time. Of course, it actually took a long time before he came back, and this is what, of course, he's doing. It didn't actually look as if, of course, he's actually stayed away. Though we've seen, of course, had some couple of time as well in trying to get the holes. Well, from what we've seen,
off golf for his appearances in the last 3 years has been very, very, very little competition he had in the last 3 years, but still coming to make history there. 24th consecutive. I can't remember of any other golfer that's had made the 24th consecutive cuts.
Very impressive. Very, very impressive, for Tiger Woods. And
at the age of 48.
At the age of 48, I tell you, Mr. Siri, it's something very, very fantastic, of course, for him. And
like we said, he's had injury. We have record that he has a fused back, and of course, right ankle. That's some say, all of these fused, and yet he's still, aftermath of that car injury, accident he had, he's still coming out to make the game. If you remember, Tiger Woods at the stage was #1 golfer for 683 weeks, and that's for almost about a period of about 18 years, where he was #1 golfer, in the world. And now he's winding down after winning about 15 major championships. And of course, 5 of those 15 came at the Masters at the Augusta, which everybody knows to be one of the best golfing championship around the world.
I think for me it's actually a good one, and if you take a look at it, the man has actually put up a very huge legacy, for himself when it comes to his achievement, the accolades, he's actually gotten for himself.
He's won as many as 82 times on the PGA Tour. That's quite a number.
Quite a number, of course. You would say, despite all of the hurdles, of course, he's actually passed through. He still came back and was able, of course, to create, the record this time around, for himself. I think we must really give it to Tiger Woods when it has to do with. Of course, we could say at this point that he's the best from what we've seen, at the moment. And
at this stage, he himself didn't even believe that he was going to make the cut. Going to this the Augustas because of all of the injury concerns and less competition. But surprisingly, he made the cut, and not just making the cut, making history as well. 24th consecutive cut at the Augustas.
We should also give credit to his medical team because they've actually done a lot of job, of course, on him. You take a look at that car crash, was very severe, of course, on the man. He had a lot of surgery before, of course, he was able to, come out, to the media or for people or to see him, even for him to be able to walk again, because a lot of injuries he sustained, in that particular car crash. I think much credit should be given to his medical team as well. And taking a look at the fact that he was being able to bounce back and as well get some level of training, and then this is what he's doing at this point in time. And must also give it up to him for having that determination, that resilience, and as well as that tenacity to be able to go through all of this and still come back, of course, to be able to put up these great numbers for himself. I think it's actually a good one, of course, for the man. And we hope, of course, he continues like this.
He's gotten 5 green jackets already at the Augustas, and he's looking forward to making jacket number 6 at the Augustas. And that will be a record for Tiger Woods. Right now, he's just only about 8 shots behind the leader, Brian DeChambeau, who has finished top so far. But let's see whether Tiger Woods can get past him in the few hours remaining at the Augusta. But this weekend is a weekend where Tiger Woods has made the 24 cuts, consecutive cuts, and that's really a record after putting up as many as 683 weeks as the top golfer in the world. So we would like to wish Tiger Woods better just luck or days and performances in the next few hours to see whether he can maybe finish golf on a high. He doesn't want to quit, but like we mentioned earlier, he's 48 years of age. But again, his favorite time is being on the golf course. Let's stay away from golf now this weekend and now quickly go to tennis. And in tennis this weekend, a lot is happening, but the biggest one is coming at the Monte Carlo Masters. Kingsley, let's first look at the WTA. How are the women performing at the Monte Carlo Masters?
Impressive one, so far when it has to do with the Monte Carlo Masters. But I think the current results we have so far is from the male. The only results we have from the female is from the Billie Jean Cup qualification, where Emma Raducanu, of course, put up a very, very impressive, a highly spirited performance, of course, to get past Caroline Garcia in a 3-6, 6-3. 6-2 victory for her. It was such an impressive performance. No one expected that from Emma Raducanu, who has been who has been very, very poor when it has to do with her performance. And of course you see a lot of injuries have actually brought setback to her performance on the court, but not the kind of Emma, not a regular Emma Raducanu we saw in that particular encounter against Garcia. And I think for me it's actually a huge one. Morale booster for her, and confidence level, of course, will definitely increase getting past a player like Caroline Garcia, who is actually ranked number 4 in the WTA. But we'll keep our fingers crossed because Emma Raducanu, at some point you see her coming up, and the next day you see her going down. But we hope maybe she can be able to build on this confidence and of course see how she can take, of course, Great Britain to another level. But coming up down to the Monte Carlo Masters, Novak Djokovic, of course, is in the semi-final of the Monte Carlo Masters after he beat Alex de Minaur in a 7-5, 6-4 victory. It was quite, of course, an impressive performance, from the man Novak Djokovic. Of course, after parting ways with his coach, was seeing a little bit of a different Novak Djokovic this time, trying as much as he can, of course, to put things straight for himself. I think getting down to the semi-final will be a very huge one, and this is, of course,
this is his record, 77.
Yeah.
Semi-final, the ATP event, yeah. 100 events. That's quite a big number. I think he's now better than Rafael Nadal.
Yeah, Rafael Nadal, and a good one, of course, for him. And I think we're now seeing Djokovic, of course, coming back gradually. He is trying to rejuvenate himself, knowing the fact that he still has like 2 or 3 Grand Slam, of course, to play another ATP tournament for himself. Also to maintain his #1 status as well. That actually means a lot, of course, to him at this point in time. But let's see how far we'll be able to go in this Monte Carlo Masters. I think for him, we take a look at...
He has Gaspar Ruud to play next?
Not a very tough opponent, if you ask me. Gaspar Ruud, I won't classify him, of course, as a top player. I think Djokovic has what it takes, to get past him. But that notwithstanding, we might possibly see an upset. It's a game of tennis, anything can happen. But for Djokovic, I think his rejuvenation, for what we've seen so far, possibly he should get past Gaspar Ruud.
Gaspar Ruud, no doubt about it, is one man who can upset Novak Djokovic, but with the experience and of course the need to get properly prepared for the next Grand Slam, Novak Djokovic powers on, world #1 in male tennis. And talking about male tennis reminds me of one man, Yannick Sinner. It looks like the next big thing in tennis. He went past Holger Rune, 6-4, 6-7, 6-3 to set up a semi-final against Stefanos Tsitsipas. Before we look at his performance against Stefanos Tsitsipas, he's taking out Holger Rune. Do you think he can do what he did at the Indian Wells?
Of course, you definitely give it up to him. The man has only lost once this season, and
yes.
that is actually a very huge statement, for him, from what we've seen so far. He's actually taken out big names. Novak Djokovic, Daniel Medvedev, he's locked on with Carlos Alcaraz. We've seen his performance, against this players.
He has been to semi-finals of the ATP 1000 event this year, this season alone.
So that is actually a very huge statement for him going into that particular one. I think for me, the man has what it takes, of course, to challenge, in this particular one. No matter who comes up, of course, on his way next, I think Jannik Sinner, of course, is the man for the moment.
Well, he's the man of the moment. Remember his performances at the Miami and, of course, the India Wells performance. Let's see how that one pans out. But I'm very sure Novak Djokovic, the way he's going, if he has to meet someone like Jannik Sinner again,
it will be a tough one. It will be a tough one. We can't forget what happened at the Australian Open as well. So it will be a very, very tough encounter. And I think this is what, from what we're saying from Jannik Sinner as well, playing big names. We're saying he got past, so many big names on his way down to this Monte Carlo Masters. I think Austin had big names has been his motivation so far, and I think if he eventually, of course, tend to meet Djokovic again, we might possibly see another spirit, of course, from the man. But I tell you, Mr. Sri, it's going to be a very tough one. But I don't know where, of course, the pendulum will swing to in that particular encounter if possibly it comes to reality.
Everybody seems to say Jannik Sinner is the next big thing in tennis, and from what he's doing so far this season, like you mentioned there, he's lost only one set. This season he's been spectacular. Let's hope that he will come to the final. And again, an opponent everybody is asking for, Novak Djokovic, world number one. If you beat the world number one, then you could easily say that you are next world number one. Well, let's stay away from tennis this weekend and now go to Formula One. And talking about Formula One reminds me that the Australian Grand Prix is set to return as a season opener in 2025. Remember, in the tennis, we have the Australian Open as a season opener in Grand Slam. We lost that in Formula One a couple of years ago, but now it's like it will return. Though we saw for 2024, it's in March, but now we are told that in February next year, it will be the season opener in Formula One and not any other Grand Prix.
Yes, and I think it's going to be a very huge one, talking about the Australian Grand Prix. And this is happening because of the timing of the holy month of Ramadan. That means the Bahrain Grand Prix, the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, of course, will be shifted.
Yeah, of course, this year we started with the Bahrain Grand Prix.
Yes, will be shifted. And then the Australian Grand Prix, of course, will be the race, of course, to start with, come next year. And I think for me, good one, at this point in time, the Australians will have a feel of it, at the early, part of the season. And we'll just keep our fingers crossed and say, so there's going to be a change of calendar totally comes 2025 in Formula One.
Very, that's an interesting change induced by change of, the Ramadan season coming up next year. So normally the traditional starters, which are the Bahrain Grand Prix and the Saudi Grand Prix, will not start. So it has to start in Melbourne, which is the Australian Grand Prix for the year 2025. I'm sure these drivers will be looking forward to it. Some new drivers are having contracts as well signed with their team. One man that may just be with a new team will be Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, Lewis Hamilton, of course, 2025, moving straight, to Ferrari. Because hasn't that been easy for him in the past 2 seasons at Mercedes? The man has been struggling for the past 2 seasons now. Lewis Hamilton has been unable to win a race, and that is not a very good record, for a kind of driver, like him. And so for me, him moving to Ferrari, not a bad decision. I think he's just trying to, change direction and see how, of course, things will go, down for him. And we should just keep our fingers crossed and see what comes up. And one man who has also put pen to paper is Fernando Alonso. Of course, he has extended his contract with the McLaren side to 2026. I think we should be seeing a very competitive 2025 when it has to do with Formula One.
Formula One definitely will be very competitive next season with drivers changing the cars, and we just hope that this change of cars will result to change of performances as well, because if you talk of performances, Lewis Hamilton has had a very torrid performance last year and this year. So maybe changing cars might just do it for him. Everybody knows that he is a very top driver, but the machine, the car he drives, this time around, it seems to be slowing him down. Mercedes themselves will have to find a way to upgrade their cars.
Mercedes, they have to find a way to upgrade their cars. A lot, of course, need to be done. The engine, of course, need to be, of course, maybe changed, or probably they should look for a way to adjust it, because the two drivers are struggling. George Russell and Lewis Hamilton, of course, they are really struggling. You don't see them, of course, coming top, in the races, of course, we've seen that so far. I think they are really struggling at the moment. It's so sad that, the past 2 seasons, Mercedes have just gone down, the lane. We don't see them competing as before. It's a very sad one. I think they should just look for a means, and see whatever they can do to be able to put the cars in order.
Cars has to be in order, but again, what do you say? Red Bull wouldn't let their car be just be overtaken like that, and it was Max Verstappen and his other driver, Sergio Perez, definitely up to it as well. While you are improving on your own car, I'm not too sure the other constructors will just let their car.
They're not relenting.
Relenting as well.
They're not relenting at all. Red Bull, of course, are not relenting. In fact, they're even improving the car the more from what we've seen at this
within specifications, limits.
Yeah. So, but what we've seen so far, it's not going to be easy for any team, of course, to challenge Red Bull at this point in time. But let's just keep our fingers crossed. Lewis Hamilton going down to Ferrari. Ferrari, I think their car is a little bit better. With the combination of the likes of Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton in Ferrari, we might see another competition, in Formula One come next season. I think we should just keep our fingers crossed and see what's happening. But despite, the improvements we've seen from Red Bull at this point in time, they are looking very unstoppable, as it's time. But I think there's going to be a very huge competition coming from Ferrari come next season.
Formula One next season definitely will be very interesting and intriguing, because some drivers will be changing, cars will be improved upon, and the aerodynamics as well. Talking about management, there's a lot more changing in terms of regulations as well coming up in 2025 in Formula One. So if you're a Formula One follower, definitely it will be very interesting to see how this all pan out next year. Well, time for us to take a break, and before we take the break, we'll let you know that something big is coming up in Wembley next few months from now, because everybody knows that Saudi Arabia has been the new maker of boxing and most of sports events as well. But especially in boxing, we've seen some heavyweight bouts being hosted in the kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Jeddah to be specific. But this time around, Wembley in England, we expected to host the all British heavyweight clash between Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. When we return from a break, we'll let you know when next year this will take place, and if it will actually be taken away from Jeddah, Saudi Arabia.
From the line across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring on sport news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in politics, business.
extraordinary weekend edition here on Atlantic Television. And I can tell you that this weekend we've seen more Nigerians earn tickets to go to the Paris Olympic Games, and that is very cheering because at every tournament you need to make your mark, and we've seen more Nigerians earn tickets to go to the Olympic Games in Paris. And this same weekend we've seen Tiger Woods make his 24th cut, at the Masters. That's quite an impressive one for the 48-year-old for making his 24 Masters cut this weekend at the Augusta National Golf Club. And beyond that, we'll now have to go straight to boxing. And talking about boxing reminds me that in the recent past, we've seen Saudi Arabia hosting major heavyweight bouts and some other sporting events as well. Everybody expecting that the all-British fight between Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua will be hosted at the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. But it looks now that the Wembley Stadium in England will be the host of the all-British heavyweight clash between Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. Kingsley, how did the British do this one?
For me, I think there is much need. It's actually both fighters are British boxers, and they really want to have this one, on their own. Saudi Arabia, of course, has been the hub of boxing. From what we've seen, they hosted so many boxing bouts. The bout between Tyson Fury and Ngannou was hosted in Saudi Arabia. The bout between Anthony Joshua and Ngannou was there. Anthony Joshua, Hellenius, of course, was there. I think the Saudi are gradually taking their attention, from...
You remember, it's expected that sometime later in the next few weeks, just about a few weeks from now, May 18 to be specific, we'll have the Tyson Fury and Usyk fight as well, hosted in same Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. But that the all-British fight will take place will be dependent on whether Usyk beats Alexander Usyk.
Yes. Except if
Tyson Fury beats
Alexander Usyk. I think that would be what, of course, warrants that particular one. Yes, to be hosted in Wembley. As it is. So we just have to keep our fingers crossed and see what comes up on May 18 down there in Saudi Arabia. Can Fury, of course, take down Alexander Usyk? Of course, that will give the nod, for this particular one, of course, to be hosted in Wembley. We'll just keep our fingers crossed. But for the fans, of course, at Wembley, clamoring for this one, I think they need it because they really want to have their own. And for me, it will be a win situation as well, despite the fact that the money is coming from Saudi. I think as well, the fans are also there in England, of course, to be able to support, both boxers when it comes to ticket sales, pay-per-view, and the rest of them. I think the money will also come, despite the fact that the Saudi, they have the money at this point in time to spend. So for me, we'll just keep our fingers crossed and see who takes it. Will it be Fury against, will Fury take it against Usyk? And I think that will be the only way we can actually see that bout, comes up in Wembley at this point in time.
Fingers all crossed, and looking forward to the all-British bout to be hosted in England, Wembley to be specific. Tyson Fury, up against yet another opponent everybody fears in the world of boxing. But Anthony Joshua, no doubt with the Nigerian connection, should have support from boxing fans around Africa as well. He is Nigerian British up against Tyson Fury, who is all British, so to say. But where this one will take place, let's see what happens on the 18th, where in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, it will be Alexander Usyk at the ring. So it's interesting days ahead for boxing. Let's stay away this weekend from boxing now and now go to football. And for football, let's first of all start here in Nigeria before we go to the top leagues in Europe and see how teams are beginning to prepare for the business end. And when I mean business end, it is the one that determines who plays where next season. Will it be, are you going to play in the CAF Champions League, or you are going to play in the CAF Confederations Cup, or you are going to play in the UEFA Champions League, or you are going to play Europa League, or even Europa Conference League. But first, let's start with what happens here in Africa. And for you to play at the CAF Champions League or the CAF Confederations Cup, you have to confess second on the league table here in Nigeria. I'm talking about the Nigeria Premier League table right now. It's looking very, very interesting, Kingsley. This weekend, which team is at the top of the Premier League here in Nigeria?
Looking very interesting, Mr. Siri. For what we've seen so far, Enugu Rangers, of course, stay at the top of the Nigerian Premier Football league. Of
After
course,
13 weeks?
After 13 weeks with, I think, 51 points, down there for them. They've been very, very impressive so far in the Nigerian Premier Football League. And from what, of course, we've seen so far, they look very formidable. Lobby Stars, of course, are second in that particular group. Remo Stars and Enyimba, of course, complete the top four with 49 and 48 points, respectively.
I'm talking about the top four reminds me, the first two will play in the
CAF
Champions League, and the last two, that's the third and the fourth, will play in the CAF Confederation. So, courtesy of that performance of Rivers United, that played and of course crashed out at the CAF Confederation Cup quarter-final stage of the competition. 8 more games to go in the Premier League here in Nigeria. We understand that some matches have had to be rescheduled, especially with Rivers United having about 6 of the games rescheduled following their performances at the continent. But this weekend we have just one fixture.
Yep.
Beyond that fixture, which is Rangers versus Abia Warriors. That might come up at the Cathedral. What do you expect, given the way Rangers have been playing and playing first, being the first place team on the table?
Chuko, of course, has been very fantastic with this Rangers side. There's been a lot of support, for Rangers. And for what we've seen so far, I think playing at home, that's already an advantage for them. They're going to go all out, of course, to make sure they fight for the needed 3 points. Abia Warriors, they've been a little bit shaky. I don't think they... The fact that some of their players, were injured. Some players, of course, left the team, and they couldn't actually, continue. They needed, of course, more players, to boost the strength of the team. But they've not, of course, gotten those players, as a stand. And that's why we've seen Sporting Lagos, of course, not having the kind of performance we saw them coming into the Nigerian Premier Football League. But against Sunshine Stars, where Kennedy Boboye, of course, is now at the helm of affairs, it's going to be a very tight one. Though Sunshine Stars are playing away from home, and Sporting Lagos, of course, are at home. Home advantage, of course, we can.
Has Lobby Stars to contend with. This is one fixture that is traditional here in Nigeria. Shooting Stars of Ibadan up against Lobby Stars. Looking at the position on the league table, Lobby Stars are a lot better than Shooting Stars.
Yeah, Lobby Stars much better than Shooting Stars. They are second on the log at the moment, where, of course, you have Shooting Stars. I think around the top 10, they are 6th on the log. Shooting Stars. Benga Ogunbuti has really done a very good job, with the Shooting Stars, as side. And I think for me, it's going to be a very tight one for Lobby Stars. They should really National League.
Well,